I will read each sentence, but before I do that, a quick survey of what he has said already earlier, because he is developing the theme over pages and pages, and so we sometimes lose the track. Good morning, Jasmine. So,
Bonjour.
bonjour, yes, bonjour. So, I will read the summary of what he has said so that we get the continuity. He has said in the previous paragraph, he has told you that there is a passivity and there is an activity of the Chit Shakti. The Shakti can be absolutely static, as in the self and the Brahman consciousness, or it can be very, very active, as in nature, in the universe. Okay, so it's entirely up to it. So now Srimati is saying in the previous paragraph, we need not ask at present whether passivity is relative or absolute to the activity. Let us note that the passivity and the activity are not opposites, nor are they separate. They are always together. Okay? They are both really the Brahman expressing itself on two poles of the one and same thing. What he is saying about passivity and activity, you can also extend that to Purusha and Prakriti, because Purusha is the passivity and Prakriti is the activity, nature and spirit. See, essentially, it's the truth is very simple, but when we come down, it becomes a many, and so we use the spirit and Purusha and self. Okay, all these are almost equivalent terms, whereas nature, activity, okay, Prakriti, they are also almost the same terms. There is a difference because of the levels, but still it makes it much simpler to understand the thing. Okay, so that's what he's saying. I go to the next point of the summary. The passivity is a self dwelling upon itself. In other words, it's an inward looking concentration, not outward going. The outward going would be the universe because it is diffused and going outwards. And that's why it becomes very diluted. The force is diluted in nature. The passivity is a self dwelling upon itself. The activity is the same force deploying itself into movement in the universe. It is tapas in both cases. Tapas is the concentration and the heat that is produced. Tapas is the heat of incubation, just like the bird which sits on the egg to give it the necessary heat for development. Exactly the same thing. In the activity, the tapas is a multiple concentration into many forms. So we feel that the force is diluted, but it is concentrated in many forms, in stones, in trees, in animals, in men also. It is there. And that is the self, that's your soul. The soul is a concentrated form. Okay, so it looks like a diffusion, a dilution, but it is not really so. Okay, even our attention at the human level is so diversified, so outward going. It's a deep line. But if you go into the psychic being, it becomes a concentration. Both are there in man also, in animal also, in nature, as well as in the higher planes of consciousness. And at the highest plane of consciousness, they become equal to each other. In the other planes down below, they are inversely proportional to each other. If one grows, the other becomes less. Okay? So that's the way we have to see it. Now, the third point of the summary. The process, just 1 second. Once again, it's not moving. So basically, that's what he's saying. No? The process is the same in the individual and the universe. Okay, so Now we read each sentence of what is said earlier. Just 1 second. Yeah, I'll be able to complete just 1 second. Yeah, but that's the same. The process is the same in the individual and the universe. That's it. What he said in the previous paragraph. Now, each sentence I read of what we have to redo. The reality then is neither an eternal passivity of immobile being, nor an eternal activity of being in movement. The eternal activity of being in movement is nature. And the reality, the eternal passivity of immobile being is the self. Okay? Not the cyclic being, it's the self. Because the cyclic being does evolve. It's in the field of nature. It's at level 1. Okay? So, nor is it an alternation in time between these two things. It's not an alternation. They are always together, he said. Okay? It sometimes seems to be alternating, but actually it is always there together. Maybe one becomes more prominent and the other becomes less prominent. Neither, in fact, is the sole absolute truth of Brahman's reality. Why is he going on spending so much time here? Because the ascetic and the Buddhists are saying the opposite. They are saying that the passivity is the truth. And the activity in nature, all the movement, that's an illusion. Okay? There is a truth in what they are saying at level 2, in the lowest part of level 2, in the spiritual planes of consciousness, it is true. You do see the insignificance of the outer manifestation. The inner manifestation is definitely gives the impression of being more true. Okay, so that's what he's saying. Neither, in fact, is the sole absolute truth of Brahman's reality. Their opposition is only true of it in relation to the activities of its consciousness. There is a truth here, relative truth. When we perceive its deployment of the conscious energy of its being in the universal action, we speak of it as the a mobile active Brahman, Saguna. Okay? That's it, mobile active Brahman. When you see it in the universe. But when you see it in the self, it is inactive. And they don't always act together. So if you are in the nature, you don't see the self. And if you are in the self, you see the physical world is unreal. So where is this dichotomy? That's the whole problem that comes and people say, this is true, that is true and all that. Right in the beginning, if you remember, in chapter 2, 3, the materialist denial and the refusal of the ascetic. There is a problem. And entire Life Divine is a refutation of these two stands, and he's saying that if you go to the highest level of the third level, you will see that both are real in different attitudes. One is red, one is blue. That doesn't mean to say that red is real and blue is unreal. It's a different way of looking at things. That's what he's saying. Okay? The world is not unreal. So I read the next one. Its being in the universal action, when we perceive its deployment of the conscious energy of its being in universal action, we speak of it as mobile active Brahman. When we perceive its simultaneous reservation, okay, not spreading outward, but reservation, pulling inwards of the conscious energy of its being, kept back from the action, we speak of it as the immobile passive Brahman. Saguna, Nirguna, Kshara, Akshara. Kshara is the one that is mutable and Akshara is the one that is immutable. Otherwise, the terms would have no meaning. For there is one reality and not two independent realities. One immobile, the other mobile. In the ordinary view of the soul's evolution into the action, pravritti. Pravritti is action. Nivritti is non-action. Okay? Inaction, if you want. And its involution, Just 1 minute, and go to the next page. Yeah, and its involution into the passivity, nivritti. Just 1 second. Yeah, nivritti. It is supposed that in the action, the individual soul becomes ignorant. Now, change is saying it is supposed. That's a usual idea. So how will you deal with it? Let us see. It is supposed that in the action of the individual soul, in the action, the individual soul becomes ignorant, nascent of its passion, which is supposed to be its true being, and in the passivity, it becomes finally nascent of its active, which is supposed to be its false or only apparent being. So simply use the word suppose. Okay? It's true at a certain level, but it's not absolutely true. In other words, when you are in the normal consciousness of man, the soul is there that deep inside you, the psychic being, but you are not aware of it. You are aware only of the movement, you are aware of only body-mind life. And when you lose your identification with body-mind life and you go to the self, then the world becomes unreal. That's what he's saying. And it is supposed to, in Indian philosophy for a long time, that this is the nature of the reality, this is how it is, and you must accept it. Sri Aurobindo does not accept. He says, no, they are one, they are not different. Go to another third level and you will see that they are both together all the time. Okay. One is not real and one is not unreal. It's not like that. It is supposed to be false and only apparent. But this is because the two movements take place alternatively for us, as in our sleep and waking. We pass in waking into nescience of our sleeping condition, in sleep into nescience of our waking being. So he is explaining with very obvious, with very obvious example. When I am sleeping, I am not aware of the physical world. I am aware only of myself. I am passive to the physical world. But when I am moving in the physical world and moving and talking and doing everything normally, I am completely ignorant of my passive condition. I don't remember that at all. So very similarly, but this example that is giving is most outward. Okay, it's the most obvious. But in the spiritual plane of consciousness, it is totally the same principle applies, but it is different. When you are passive, you are in a consciousness which is far superior to the active consciousness. This is because the two movements take place alternatively, and is giving the example of sleeping. But this happens because only part of our being performs this alternative movement, and we falsely think of ourselves as only that partial existence. It's the outer nature that is experiencing this. Okay? Or in the self, it's the inner nature which is experiencing the passivity and the negativity, the passivity and the activity. But we can discover by a deeper psychological experience that the larger being in us is perfectly aware of all that happens, even in what is to our partial and superficial being, a state of unconsciousness. So don't get limited only to the lowest planes or the spiritual planes of consciousness. If you rise a little higher, you will see that you are watching everything in the physical world, you are doing also everything in the physical world, but you are also aware of your inner being. This is what you can describe as the waking samadhi. The waking samadhi, you are fully aware of your passive being, your self and your psychic being. Okay? But mainly the self. The psychic being may not come in. May not. Okay. But you are acting in the physical world fully, and you are completely conscious of your higher self. This is what Sri is saying. A deeper psychological experience that the larger being in us is perfectly aware of all that happens, even in what is to our partial and superficial being, a state of unconsciousness. Okay? the state of unconsciousness of the soul, of the self. We are not conscious now, but you can become very conscious of your inner being and yet continue to act in the physical world. It is limited neither by sleep nor by waking. So, it is in our relations with Brahman, who is our real and integral being. So, what is true at this level? I am capable of working in the physical world without forgetting myself. Normally, human beings you have completely forgotten about yourself. But in spiritual experience, it's possible to be in the physical world, talking, working, doing everything, and yet be aware of yourself. That is what we are describing as the waking samadhi. The other one, that is the other samadhi, not a waking samadhi, but a deeper samadhi. You are not aware of the physical world. And again, at the same time, the other one, when you are in the self, you normally have a tendency to ignore the physical world and say, I don't want to have anything to do with it because I am not doing anything there. It is nature which is doing, I am not doing. But that also can be changed. That's what Siddhi is saying. So what can be changed in level 1, in the ignorance, without ignorance? That means you are in the body-mind life acting. You are aware that nature is doing and you become an instrument of the divine, and you are aware fully of your deeper self. But when you are in the deeper self, you can continue to act in the physical world in spite of what the Mayavadins and what the Buddhists say. Okay? It's possible to do that. That's what Sri is saying. Okay? A deeper psychological experience that the larger beingness is fully aware. Okay? Now, of all that happens when in what is yours partial and superficial being, the state of unconsciousness. It is neither sleep, it is neither by sleep nor by waking. So it is in our relation with Brahman, who is our real and integral being. In the ignorance, that means in our normal consciousness, we identify ourselves with only a partial consciousness, mental or spiritual mental in its nature. Okay? We are identified with her. Shamla is not mentioning body and vital, but that also we are identified with it. Mentally, you think you are separate from everybody else. Nascent of this self of status by movement. In this part of us, when we lose the movement, we lose at the same time our hold on our self of action by entering into passivity. Okay? This is what happens. When the mental being, the Purusha, enters the second level of the spiritual planes of consciousness, you lose contact with the level 1. That's what he's saying. But that's not essential. As I said earlier, you can continue to keep your contact with level 1, with the body-mind life, and yet be in level 2, in the spiritual planes of consciousness. But doesn't come immediately. It has to be developed. It takes time to do that. Okay. In the ignorance, we identify ourselves with only a partial consciousness, mental or spiritual mental in its nature, which becomes nascent of itself of status by movement. In this part of us, when we lose the movement, what does it mean when we lose the movement? We are unaware of the physical world, and when we go up into the self, we lose at the same time our hold on our self of action. The action, the power to act is removed, okay, by entering into passivity. By an entire passivity, the mind falls asleep or enters into trance, or else is liberated into a spiritual silence. 3 possibilities. By an entire passivity, the mind falls asleep. In other words, you are not aware of the physical world. Or enters into trance. Okay? So enter into trance, again you are not aware of the physical world. Or else is liberated into a spiritual silence. You can go up, but you are not in the physical world. Your consciousness is not in the physical world. Your body-mind life is lying here. Okay, but you have nothing to do with it. You feel it's something totally outside yourself. But though it is a liberation from the ignorance of the partial being in its flux of action, it is earned by putting on a luminous nations of the dynamic reality or a luminous separation from it. Very interesting what he's saying. Okay, you have to understand the words. It is earned. What is earned? Liberation from ignorance and partiality. It is earned by putting on a luminous nations. So he is describing the experience of the self as a luminous nations. Luminous, full of light, full of knowledge, but you are not aware of the physical world. That's why nations of the dynamic reality. Or a luminous separation from it. So either it is totally, you see the physical world as unreal, which is the Buddhist stand, or a luminous separation from it. The world is not unreal, but you are separated from it. You are not in the world. This is the cosmic consciousness. In the cosmic, cosmic consciousness is not that. Luminous separation is the Mayavadian philosophy. Also the Buddhistic philosophy also. Okay? In other words, the world is not unreal to you, okay, but it is separate from you. That's what he's saying. Now, just to make it very more specific, okay, the Buddhist is saying that the physical world is unreal. So that is the nations, the luminous nations, okay. But the Shankara says the world is not unreal, it is real in time and space. So that is the separation, luminous separation. The world is real, but you are separate from it. Okay? It's separated in time and space. That's the difference. Now Sridhar comes and says, you can go to another level of consciousness where everything is luminous. There's no nations at all. No nation is ignorance, no ignorance. You are aware of yourself, you are aware of the physical world, you are aware of the divine presence in the physical world, and you also have the power to act in the physical world as an instrument of the divine. Your action is not in ignorance now, its action is totally in accordance with what the divine wills you to do. That's what it says. Okay? The spiritual mental being remains self-absorbed in a silent essential status of existence and becomes either incapable of active consciousness or repugnant to all activity. The repugnance was not there in Sri Aurobindo when he experienced the self, but it is very repugnant to the Buddhist and the Mayavadi. They say the physical world is dense, no consciousness. There's so much of evil, so much of perversion, so much of materialism there. So it is disgusting to them. But Sri Aurobindo says, no, behind this apparent disgusting condition, there is a divine action is there. This release of silence is a status through which the soul passes in its journey towards the absolute. So he's saying that the Buddhistic position and the Mayavadic position, it is real, but it's a state, it's a middle path. You have not come to the end of the journey yet. Okay? There may be a justification for what they are saying, but it's not the end of the story. Okay? You can go even higher up. That's what he's saying. It's only a passage through a state in the journey towards the absolute. But there is a greater fulfillment of our true and integral being, in which both the static and the dynamic sides of the self are liberated and fulfilled in that which upholds both and is limited neither by action nor by silence. So that's a third level superman. Now, one thing is there which we can say, okay, he's saying that there's a greater fulfillment of our true and integral being in which both the static and the dynamic sides of self are liberated. So that word liberated gives me, in Synthesis of Yoga, there are two chapters. Okay? One chapter is the liberation of the soul. The soul in us is imprisoned in the body-mind life. So when you get liberation of the soul escapes. And that is the self, experience of the self. But the world becomes unreal and you have no power over the world. That's the liberation of the soul. But next chapter in life in synthesis, Sandra says, liberation of the nature. In other words, even your nature becomes a part of the divine action. Okay? There should be liberation of the nature also. And that is possible only at the third level. You get the power to change your body, mind, life and act with the divine consciousness in the supermind. But when you are identified with the supermind in bits and pieces, okay, then you have that power. But to have permanently, you have to be, to have permanently the power, you have to be stationed in the supermind. It's not an experience, but it has to be a realization. That has not yet been done by anybody as yet. That will be possible in the next stage of evolution when the supramental race will come. Then it will be clear. But again, there is another small point to be noted here. The supramental race is not going to come next. Mother says that there will be an intermediate being. She calls it the Surom. And some others have called it the overman, not the superman. So the overman is a yogi. It will be very common. There will be a large body of yogis who will have this transitional condition. Okay? Their consciousness will be completely changed, but not their body. The body will continue to be the animal body. It will be reproduced in the old animal way, okay? The old sexual manner. But the supermind, the body also will be Swayambhu. It will be completely self-created. The process, natural process will not exist for the supramental race. It will continue for the plants, for the animals, and for the normal man, it will continue. It's not going to disappear. It will disappear only in the supramental race. The supramental race will be a selection, just as the yogis are a small selection from humanity. The Superman also, the supramental race will be a small selection from the overman, if you want. That's what he said. That's his philosophy. Okay? Sriyanda didn't speak of the overman, but he does mention that there could very well be a transitional being between man and superman. And Mother has confirmed that. She says that definitely there will be a transitional being in between. So that's what it is. In fact, the number of people who will have a yogic consciousness will be much larger than what it is now. That's what it is. We can now read the next one. For Brahman does not pass alternately. So, any one of you can read. We have got 12 minutes. So we can definitely. Yes, you can do that.
For Brahman does not pass alternately from passivity to activity and back to passivity by cessation of its dynamic force of being. If that were really true of the integral reality, then while the universe continued, there would be no passive Brahman in existence. All would be action, and if our universe were dissolved, there would be no active Brahman. All would become cessation and immobile stillness. But this is not so, for we can become aware of an eternal passivity and self-concentrated calm, penetrating and upholding all cosmic activity and all its multiple concentrated movement. And this could not be if, so long as any activity continued, the concentrated passivity did not exist, supporting it and within it. Integral Brahman possesses both the passivity and the activity simultaneously and does not pass alternately from one to other as from a sleep to a waking. It is only some partial activity in us which seems to do that. And we, by identifying ourselves with that partial activity, have the appearance of this alteration from one nescience to another nescience. But our integral being is not subject to those opposites, and it does not need to become unaware of its dynamic self in order to possess itself of silence. When we get the integral knowledge and the integral liberation of both soul and nature, free from the disabilities of restricted, partial, and ignorant being, we too can possess the passivity and activity with a simultaneous possession, exceeding both these poles of the universality, limited by neither of those powers of the self in its relation, non-relation to nature.
I will read the summary of what he's saying to get the gist of what he's saying. That will help us to understand the terminology that Srivendra uses. What he's saying now is Brahman does not pass from passivity to activity, just like the human experience. Okay? The human experience, you are in activity, identified with body, mind, life, and you go into the passivity by liberation. So that's it. What he's saying is that. But Brahman does not do that. It's the individual who does that. The Brahman does not pass from passivity to activity and back again by cessation of its activity. If that were so, then the passivity would not exist when the universe was in movement. Okay? And if that were so, where is it gone? Yeah. Then the passivity would not exist when the universe was in movement, nor would the reverse be true. He's talking from the Brahman, huh? He's talking of God. He's saying that God is not in one plane only. Level 1, level 2, level 3, he is not like that. He is not from level 3, he is not coming down into level 2 and then descending into level 1. If he is doing that, then when he is in level 1, he is ignorant of level 2. And when he is in level 2, he is ignorant of level 1. But it's not like that. He is there all the time in all the planes of consciousness. That's what he said. The individual cannot do that. But the divine can certainly do that. That's why you have the 3 states. Nah? He is transcendental outside the universe. He is cosmic in the universe without losing his transcendental consciousness. Then he even descends to the 3rd level, the individual consciousness, without losing the cosmic consciousness and the transcendental consciousness. But human beings, it doesn't work like that. You are conscious only of the transcendental, only of the cosmic, or only of the individual. So the problem is that instead of those yoga, you have to be conscious of all the 3 together, not one by one. He says, no, if you are one by one, then you are ignorant of the others. So you have to be conscious of all together. That's why it is called the integral yoga. Okay? All the 3 states, transcendental, cosmic, and individual, you have to have all of them together. That is the aim of the integral yoga. That is to say that when the passivity alone is experienced, then the universe would disappear and cease to exist. But this is not what happens. It is possible to be in a state of consciousness when the calm silence of the Brahman actually supports and makes possible the activity of the universe. The integral Brahman contains both simultaneously the activity as well as the passivity. The integral reality does not alternate between the 2 poles as man does in sleep and waking. In the integral knowledge, when both soul and nature are free, now he's using the word soul and nature, rather I am using the word soul and nature. Soul is the passivity, nature is the activity. Soul is the Purusha, nature is the Prakriti. Are free, liberated from the restricted and partial nature of ignorance. Man can possess both passivity and activity at once together, master of both, not subject to either of them in their exclusivity. He's saying it's possible to do that. It's difficult, but it's possible to do. That's what he's saying. Okay. Now, 8:35. We have got 5 minutes. But basically, you got the idea of what he's saying. He's saying that the normal human being is conscious only of, like us, we are conscious only of our body, mind, life. We are not conscious of ourself. But when you go to the spiritual plane of consciousness, you are conscious of the self. But the physical, you are not in your body, mind, life. So, and that also there are two. There can be, you are conscious that there is a body, mind, life, but you are not part of it. It's not yours. That's one. But there is another one, that where it is yours, but it is separate. Okay? So that's what he's saying. All these possibilities are there. But the experience of the third level tells you that you can be conscious of both at the same time. This is possible also for many others also. It depends on the individual. It's not something that is only for those who are luminously in the spiritual condition. It can happen in many other cases also. I remember reading about a case where in America, there is a man who is going on a motorbike and he has an accident and he falls down. Okay? And when he falls down, his consciousness comes out of the body, mind, life. And he is conscious of himself being separate from the body, but he knows also that part of his consciousness is the body. He can see that. Okay? And he is not a spiritual man. He just experiences that. There's part of me is here and part of me is there. That's normally a little rare. It doesn't happen like that. Either you are in the body or you are outside the body, not together. But that can happen. That's what we mentioned. Okay? Now, we still have only 3 minutes left. So, the basic idea you have got. Simply saying what the others are saying is not necessarily true. It is relatively true at the level at which they are. But there are different levels. And I can go to a level where all that they are saying can be proved wrong. That it's possible to have a consciousness on all the levels together. It's possible. Very difficult, but possible. And that is the aim and goal of the integral yoga. Okay? We stop here today. And next time, there is tomorrow. Tomorrow, if you want, we can go through this same para again quickly and then start the next one, the Supreme. It has been declared in the Gita. Okay? We can read that. So, Sumki has to make a note.
Yes.
Yeah. So, we are nearly at 8:40. So, I wish all of you a very happy day. Kiran, I want to talk to you after we have closed, okay?
Yes. Thank you, Rangada.
Merci beaucoup, Rangada.
More everybody.